7-seater SUV Space was badly in need of a car and Tata Safari came into the picture. The car was doing really well until XUV 700 came into existence, after which it gave a very tough competition to the Tata Safari. Now, Mahindra is on a roll with the launch of Scorpio-N and people are more and more confused. Should I buy the XUV or Safari, Safari or Scorpio or XUV? And that's the reason for the first time ever we have got all the three cars together for a triple comparison, which also doubles up as a 50k followers on Instagram special episode. Hello and welcome back to Shutterdrives. This is Zahur Hassan and we are here to find out which is the best car for you. Okay, so I'm going to spoil the party for you. The XUV 700 undoubtedly looks the best of all the three SUVs right now with us. Just look at this. There is no way that you're not going to look at this car again after you park it in your parking lot. This car needs absolutely no introduction in terms of the design language. It's that good. Starting off with, you have the Twin Peak logo here, the first car to get the new Mahindra logo, which looks so much miles and galaxies better than the earlier logo. And then you have the vertical slats which are chrome stripped here and with a black glossy finish around the front grille. And this is a USP of this car because especially in this color, white with black contrast looks freaking damn good. So you get LED headlamps and LED fog lamps here with a cheetah-like design. Now the thing is, the other two cars also get a projector setup while the XUV 700 does not get it. And trust me with 100% confidence that this has the best illumination at night compared to the other two cars. We have driven all the three cars at night and this definitely stands out. It seems like Tata has preferred to give priority to DRLs than the headlamps, and that's why probably DRLs are placed on top. Just kidding, it's the design element. The DRLs are placed on top to give it that distinctive Harrier and Safari combinations look. And then you have the halogen projector setup and like the LEDs out there in the other two cars. And then this remains the only car in these three cars to get the halogens for the fog lamp. The Safari gets tri-arrow chrome treatment for its grille and there are no front parking sensors as such here. In my humble opinion, after the millions of spy shots of Scorpio that came out, the Scorpio-N to be precise, I think the front design lives up to its expectations. It's actually very good and it's very distinctive. Like I said earlier, it's very distinctive from XUV 700 and that's what makes it very special, especially with the long elongated bonnet, which is a very rare and the only car to have such a long bonnet here. Just like its elder sibling XUV 700, this gets vertically slatted grille which are chrome, and then you have the LED projector setup here unlike the halogens on the Safari we just saw. And then this car remains the only car to get front parking sensors in all the three cars here, which is phenomenal. And then you have the DRL, which is a striking looking DRL and looks the best among all the three cars here. That's because it takes the shape of the sting of a Scorpion. That's how meticulous Mahindra is in terms of detailing. So these are the 18 inches of alloy wheels on the XUV 700, but honestly all the three cars get 18 inches of tires on them. That's the similarity there. But that said, this is one of the most striking designs that is there right now. In fact, it is so good that when we had the Car of the Year award, we ensured that the award was in the shape of these alloy wheels, which we handed over to the XUV 700 because it was a very well deserving car. So these are the alloy wheels on the Safari as well, 18 inch again, and honestly they are nice, but they're slightly more timid than the aggressive alloy wheels of the other two cars. So these are the 18 inches of alloy wheels on the Scorpio-N, and although they're nice, striking, everything is good, but one thing that I want to point out is the tire width is the highest here. It's 255 mm versus the 235 mm on the other two cars there. And another thing is these tires are H rated, while the other two tires that you see on Safari and XUV 700 are V rated, which means that those tires are meant to handle more and more speeds compared to the one in Scorpio, which is meant to handle slightly lesser speeds. So this is the legendary 2.2 liter engine that produces 182 bhp and 450 newton meters of torque, whereas the engine is slightly detuned in the Scorpio-N. What are the figures? Let's find out very shortly. But until then, all I want to point out is you do not get hydraulic struts, which you got in XUV 500. This is non-hydraulics, an old school way to open the bonnet of the car. So this is the iconic 2-liter diesel engine that is producing 170 bhp of power and 350 newton meters of torque. And just like the other two cars that we saw out there, even the Safari does not get hydraulic struts to open the bonnet, but nevertheless, let's see if it's heavier than the XUV or not. Honestly, I feel that this bonnet is the lightest among all the three cars here because the Scorpio is next level heavy. So this is the longitudinally mounted engine in the Scorpio-N, while as the other two cars, the XUV 7OO and the Tata Safari, which are front wheel drive SUVs, they get a transverse mounted engine. Now generally in rear wheel drives, the engine is mounted like this, and the advantage being that the weight distribution is slightly more even in the longitudinally mounted engine compared to the other one that we see out there. One thing that I kind of fail to understand is I'm not sure why a manufacturer is skimping the hydraulic struts and going old school way with this. I don't know what these rods are to open the bonnet and just place them, because the bonnet here, especially in Scorpio, is actually screaming and begging for hydraulic struts because it's very heavy compared to the other two bonnets that we see there. So these are the door handles for the XUV 7OO. These are the flush type door handles, and a lot of people thought that these door handles might fall off, but not everyone makes quality as bad as Ola Electric for anything to fall off. So these door handles are actually putting up very well, and from the styling point, they are the stylish of all the door handles right now. So you do get request sensors here in the Tata Safari, and you do get the request sensors on the Scorpio-N, which I'll show you shortly, but you do not get that on the XUV 7OO because of the fancy door handles there. So press this and you can go inside the car just in case if you have the key in your pocket. I want to talk about the side stance of the Scorpio-N in particular here, because this car looks the robust of all the three cars that's present here, with the iconic body on frame here, which is way more butchier than the monocoques there. So this is the rear of the XUV 7OO. As you can see, first things first, you get beautiful tail lamps. My god, these tail lamps are my favorite compared to anything else in this segment. Not only these three cars here, but anything else in this segment, these tail lamp beats them hands down. And then moving on, you get basic necessities like the wiper, rear wiper, and then you have a couple of parking sensors here, 4 parking sensors to aid you in those distance maneuvering. Surprisingly, there is an omission of something which you'll know very shortly. So if there's something that feels very out of place in the XUV 7OO's rear, it is this logo placement. I'm not sure what is this additional plastic thing doing here, which is not needed at all. In fact, in this Scorpio-N, the logo integration at the rear is much nicer and much more aesthetic. So let's check out the boot space of the XUV 7OO. First things first, the boot space is as expected negligible with all the 3 row of seats upwards. And the same was the case in the XUV 5OO, and nothing has improved here. And once you fold the 3rd row of seats, the boot space is so much that you can actually sit here. Not recommended, but just to give you an analogy, you can stuff in a lot of bags here. So in case you forget which car you're driving, just in case you come back, you'll be reminded that you are driving the Tata Safari, because the Safari logo, the Safari's fonts are loud and clear here. However, you do get halogen tail lamps here, and this remains only car here to get halogen tail lamps. And apart from that, the rear is slightly more rectangular compared to the Scorpio, and it falls in place with the XUV 7OO in terms of the dimensions, approximate dimensions. And that's about it. There are these blackened tail lamps, and they are not very distinctive like the one in the XUV 7OO. Scorpio tail lamps, so they are next level fancy stuff, which we'll talk about very shortly. And then you just get a reverse camera. So boot spaces are very critical, especially when you want to do the long distance highway munching, and you need to press the button there below the logo to open the boot of the Safari. You will have to put some effort till here, then it decides that okay, I'll go by myself on top. And this is the boot space with all the 3 rows up, and as you can see here, you can probably stuff in 2 or maximum 3 umbrellas and nothing more than that, because the boot space is non-existent like most of the cars that we have seen. Let's check out the boot space with all the 3 rows folded in this car. And this is how you fold the seats. So this is the boot space with the 3rd row folded, and as you can see, there is abundant space not just for your bags, but you can have a couple of adventurous stuff, like you can probably stuff in a small cycle after folding it for your long adventure. So the rear design of the Scorpio-N is one of the most controversial designs in a very long time, because a lot of people said that the tail lamps are borrowed from the Volvos. Some people told that it's borrowed from Wagoner and what not. And however, one thing that separates this from the other two beasts there is, which has a request sensor on the boot as well. So just have the key in your pocket, come and press this button, and you can enter the car. Another key differentiator here is there is a 2-step process to fold the seats of the Scorpio, unlike the other 2 cars there, and it's quite tedious, honestly. So once you fold the seats, you are greeted with decent boot space, but it's not as carnivorous as the one in XUV 7OO after you fold the seats. So that's the key differentiator here. So the interiors of the XUV 7OO has to be the most pleasing of all, and once you get inside the car, you are going to be treated with a luxurious treatment inside this car, because most of the stuff here is soft touch, unlike the hard touch materials on the other two cars that you see there. But what is the highlight of this car has to be the twin 10.25-inch systems here, the infotainment system as well as the instrument cluster here, and the content plethora information. I really don't want to go into the details of it because that will at least take half an hour just to talk about the infotainment system. You can watch a complete review of XUV 7OO where we have gone through in-depth details of the infotainment system and ADAS as well. So let's take a quick tour at what does the infotainment system have to offer. You have the Android Auto, and the Apple CarPlay has not yet come here. In this and Scorpio as well, not sure when that's going to come. And then you have music controls here. There are inbuilt apps and inbuilt navigation here. Here you have a lot of options to control in terms of the instrument cluster here. For example, starting off with you have the speedometer here, there is a tachometer. You can have the ADAS settings directly from the buttons on the steering wheel here. And moreover, what's very surprising and in fact which is nicer is Mahindra has still given you a lot of physical buttons here, when manufacturers are moving away from physical buttons and going to the touch screens of modern days. And you get start stop button on the left side here, and on the Scorpio-N you get the start stop button on the right side. This is a 6-speed gearbox which also makes its way to the Scorpio that you see there. And then there is electronic parking brake here. You get manual parking brake in the Scorpio-N, and these are the direct controls here. Just in case you want to go to the music, you want to go to the home screen, you have dedicated controls here. And there's wireless charging here, and there's wireless charging there as well. Another similarity here is you do get 2 USB chargers, and even there you do get 2 USB chargers. And then there is this rear center armrest. This is how you open it, and this is actually quite deep, but unlike here in the Scorpio, the depth storage in the armrest is slightly lesser. And yes, that's about it. But what's more important is you do get electric seats, 6-way electrically adjustable, and 3-way memory seats, which is the only car here in this playground to have memory seats. And not just that, you do get a massive panoramic sunroof, because cars without sunroof are like birds without wings these days. Talking about the overall seat comfort, the seats are very comfortable. They are soft, unlike the one in XUV 5OO where the seats are slightly firmer, and even in the Scorpio the seats are slightly firmer, but here it's kind of soft. And although it's a perforated leather, it's not ventilated. So the primary reason why people are kind of opting for the XUV 7OO over the competition is because that gets phenomenal interiors. And once you land inside the Tata Safari, you do realize that yes, you are kind of coming from something which is more sophisticated and which is more modern to something that is slightly old school. But that said, the number of physical buttons here are slightly more, and you do have physical buttons for even the eco mode as well, which kind of makes the whole experience very easy and to operate when the car is on the move. You do get the 8.8-inch floating infotainment system, as Tata wants to call it, but however there is some kind of unresponsiveness from the system. There is second thought about it, like it's not the most responsive of all, but that said, it's easier to operate. I mean, when you're driving, when you're on the move, you do have limited options here from the menu perspective, and you won't find it's tricky to operate when you're on the move, and that's kind of the good part here. You do have the basic Bluetooth and audio controls here. Won't get into the details, but yes, including navigation, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. So talking about the seats, the seat comfort is decent enough, but I think I will still pick the XUV 7OO over this in terms of the seat comfort. That is it, because the underthigh support is slightly more there, and the seats are slightly firm here. And that said, you do get 6-way proper electrically adjustable seats here. Unlike the 10.25-inch instrument cluster there, this is not so fancy. It's a normal analog speedometer here in this car, and the steering is very butchy to hold, and it's extremely intuitive to operate when you're driving the car inside city manners. And then there are electronic parking brakes with auto hold function. Here in fact 2 cup holders, and even armrest has a storage space with USB chargers. There is a USB charger here as well, and again no Type-C chargers here in the front, just like the XUV and the Scorpio as well. Another small thing to note here is the Tata Safari and the Scorpio gets the start stop button on the right sides, whereas XUV is the only car here to get start stop button on the left side. So although the XUV 7OO has the plushiest interiors of all here, of all the cars here right now, but one thing that I really have to appreciate in the Scorpio-N is the commanding seating position. It's phenomenal, and you can see the complete bonnet here. Although you can see the bits of bonnet in the Safari and the XUV 7OO, but things are a lot better here in terms of the superior commanding driving position. So that's it. You do get an infotainment system here which borrows some cues from the XUV 7OO, and it's nowhere similar to the one that we saw in the Tata Safari. So let's quickly check out what does it have to offer. But before that, I want to point out that just like the XUV 7OO, you do get a lot of physical buttons here. Won't get into the details much, and you do get a wireless Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which is a very good thing. Plus you do get wireless charging pad. And one thing that differentiates this car right now from the other two cars that are there is the manual handbrake. And the seats are very comfortable. This is the coffee and black combination that Mahindra wants to call it, and the under thigh support is good. And what's nicer is the seats get a separate contouring on the sides for that enhanced comfort. And of course there are the grab rails here, just like the old school Scorpio way. Unlike the other two cars which get the panoramic sunroof, the Scorpio gets a normal sunroof. No complaints there. It's not mandatory for every car to have a panoramic sunroof. And talking about the steering wheel, it's a flat bottom steering wheel which has heavy inspirations from the XUV 7OO. Lots of controls on the steering wheel except the ADAS controls which we saw on the XUV 7OO. But the enthusiast might like one thing, that is the presence of the analog speedometer and tachometer. And apart from that, you do get the start stop button which is placed on the right side, just like the one in Tata Safari, unlike the one in XUV 7OO. And what's more special is there is a dedicated button to switch off the front parking sensors in this car. You do not get these pillows as standard in the XUV. This car belongs to my friend Pratik. Big shout out to him and thanks for lending the car. So coming back to the point here, the second row in the XUV 7OO is honestly my favorite place to be, and it's a very close call between this and Scorpio because the interiors here are very plush and the transmission tunnel does not exist, which makes things much more easier. And ergonomics point of view, say it's very easy to stuff in your USB Type-C charging cable here, unlike the Safari where you need to take underground and go and search for that. It's like a GTA Vice City machine to find that charging port in the Tata Safari. That is not the case here in the XUV. It's very easy. Stuff it in. There are rare AC vents. Big shout out to Mahindra for actually removing the B pillar AC vents from the 500 and plonking it here because those were useless. These are much better. And talking about the underside support is good. The seats are perforated, not ventilated, and these are the grab handles. And the legroom is very good. The legroom is good, headroom is good, everything is very nicely put here. There's barely anything left to complain. So let's enter the third row space of the XUV 7OO. Not bad. A lot of manufacturers are now resorting to one touch tumble down feature, which is very nice. So just like the Scorpio-N, my knees are already touching the second row seats in the XUV 7OO. The same problem exists here as well because the second row seats are not slidable in the XUV 7OO and the Scorpio. Things are not that smooth and friendly. In fact, in the Tata Safari, the knees do not touch the second row seats and you can spend a lot of time there. Let's quickly check that out. So luckily, in the XUV 7OO and the Tata Safari, you do get last row AC vents. But however, in the Scorpio-N, Mahindra decided that okay, people who are buying the Scorpio, they don't need to be comfortable in life. Let's do one thing, let's remove the AC vents from the third row. That's what happened because there are no third row AC vents in that car, which is very surprising and very shocking. Moving to the second row of the Tata Safari, first thing that I really like here is this. The second row seats are adjustable, which means that it's going to be very convenient for people to set the legroom accordingly. But one thing that's slightly missing is the charging ports. Not sure why the charging ports are missing here, or probably Tata, yes, as I expected, charging ports are not missing, but they are invisible. They are stuffed deep inside and it's going to be a big ergonomic disaster because it's very difficult to plug them in. And then the AC vents are on the B pillar, unlike the one on the Scorpion, which are here. So that's it. There's a huge panoramic sunroof that I spoke about earlier. And talking about the armrest, you do get an armrest with 2 circular cup holders. You do get square cup holders in this Scorpio-N. These are the circular cup holders, and I feel that circular cup holders make much more sense. The seats are honestly slightly firmer compared to the one in Scorpio-N, but overall I think XUV 700 wins the race. So entering the third row space of the Tata Safari, let's check out what does it have to offer. Without a second thought, the Tata Safari offers the most space and comfort in the third row space because simple reason, the second row seats can be adjusted for sliding and recline, which also means that you can adjust the third row legroom accordingly. For example, if you have a friend who's courteous enough and tell them, hey dude, my legs are touching the seat, second row seat, can you please take the seats forward? He'll take it, and both of you can do little adjustment and you'll be happy forever. So that is a big thumbs up in the Tata Safari, which is not there in the other 2 cars from Mahindra. I don't know, I'm not sure why that happened. But just like the XUV 700, which has a 12-volt charging socket in the third row, here you get 2 USB charging ports and rear AC vents. In the Scorpio-N, you don't get anything. No AC vents and no charging sockets in the third row. The second row space in the Scorpio-N is actually good enough, and given the fact that you do not get sliding for the second row seats is slightly concerning because the third row is a disaster, honestly. And now you do get rear AC vents in the second row, and there is a Type-C charging port in the second row, but not in the first row, not sure why. And like I said earlier, there's a small sunroof and there are grab handles here. So talking about the armrest, there's a rear center armrest with 2 cup holders, and these are the coffee brown and black interiors as Mahindra wants to call it. And honestly, the seats are very comfortable overall. So let's check out the third row space of the Scorpio-N. I've heard that people are not very satisfied with it. Let's check out what does the car have to offer. How do you enter? One touch. Nice, neat. I had set my expectations right, and I did not expect much from the comfort of the Scorpio-N because a lot of people have told about it, and myself checked it few days back when I did the review. But what is more shocking is Mahindra has decided that third row people in Scorpio don't need AC vents at all because they stay in Jammu Kashmir or they stay in Switzerland, and so that's why there are no rear AC vents in the Scorpio, which is very shocking. I'm okay with not having Android Auto, wireless CarPlay, sunroof, anything. I'm totally fine because Scorpio is kind of addressing the rural or tier 2 market, and this is not justifiable. And that said, you do not get the charging ports as well in the car, so that is more alarming. So in a nutshell, it's a normal third row, typical third row space. Nothing fancy to talk about. My knees are already touching the second row seats, and that's the reason it's not very comfortable. I think that's what we expect from the third row seats of most of the 7-seater cars, unless until they actually come up with a sliding option. Driving the XUV 700 right now, and all the 3 cars have been comprehensively covered. You can check out the respective reviews for a very detailed driving video, but I'll give you a quick summary of what these cars have to offer in terms of the driving dynamics. So starting off with, you do get an electric power steering here, which is very light, and the same lightness is carried in the Scorpio as well. But on the contrary, in the Safari, the steering is very heavy, and I really mean it because the steering is very heavy in the Safari and later it gets lighter, whereas it should be the other way around. It should be lighter initially and then it should get heavier, but here in Safari it's ulta. I'll come to that later. But yes, this is the electric power steering in the XUV 700. So this is a 2.2 liter MOC engine producing 182 bhp and 450 newton meters of torque, which is a lot. And talking about the acceleration, this car literally craves to fly, especially the diesel variant. I know that petrol is better in terms of the power figures and a lot more things, which offers 200 bhp of power, but this is equally good and the torque is unmatched. It's phenomenal. It was very easy to take that U-turn, all thanks to the super light steering. Although many people might prefer it, I am not a big fan of it. So this is a 6-speed gearbox. The gearbox is very good. There's a very negligible lag, but the lag exists. I'm not telling that it's lag free. There is this very minute lag when the car is upshifting, especially, but 70 to 80% people might find it way too ignorable. So talking about the overall driving dynamics, the mid-range is very strong in this car, and as you go higher up the range, it gets even better. So it's just that thoda sa low range where you feel that the car is craving for more throttle input, and once you do that, it literally craves to fly. It's that damn good. So this is the Tata Safari, and this is the automatic variant. First things first, talking about the NVH levels, there is some amount of noise that enters the cabin. It's not the most silent of all three cars which are pitted here right now, but then it's not very vocal as such. It's just like initially when you give a lot of throttle input in the higher RPMs, you do get to know that yes, there is sound entering the cabin. The NVH levels in Mahindras are slightly better. And then talking about the general acceleration as such, again the acceleration is good enough. It's actually genuinely good, but when you compare it to the XUV 7OO, that is something that's a different league altogether. So talking about the gearbox, this is a 6-speed unit which is sourced from Hyundai, and the gear shifts are decent. I won't tell they're slickest of all. They're decent because the Asian sourced gearbox of the Mahindras definitely do a better job here again. Because वहाँ पे when you're shifting the gears, you actually don't know that you're actually shifting the gears. The lag is negligible, but यहाँ पे it gets slightly evident. Trust me on this, it's better than most of the cars that are there right now in the market. But then, if you are pitching it against the Mahindras, the gear shifts of this car could have been slightly better. This is the automatic variant, and we actually thought that it's better to compare apple to apple. That's why all three are automatics here right now in the comparison test. Taking a U-turn, how easy is it to drive the Safari in the city? Honestly, the problem is with the steering wheel, because the weight of the steering wheel is actually higher. I mean, it's more meatier, it's more heavier in the initial speeds, but then as you tap the throttle, as you go higher up the speeds, the steering gets lighter. It should be the other way around. The steering should be lighter in the initial parking speeds and it should weigh up with speed, but that's not the case here. So that is one thing that Tata Motors should actually rectify when they're getting the facelift of this car, which is due soon. That's going to come up with ADAS. That are the speculations, of course, unconfirmed reports. And talking about the braking, again, braking is something which is better than the Scorpio-N for sure, without a second thought, because I'm the guy who was not kind of impressed with the Scorpio-N's braking. And XUV 7OO also, it's good, it's probably very good, but it's not the best of the best. So Safari kind of sits between these two cars in terms of the braking performance. Scorpio-N is here in the lower end of the spectrum. There is this, the Safari, and then XUV 7OO steals the race here again. So that's about it. Overall, the car feels decently good in terms of the driving dynamics, and of course the low end grunt is phenomenal in this car. The low end grunt is absolutely phenomenal, making the entire experience very lively in terms of the driving, especially when you're taking this car up the hills. This is something that I would definitely pick. It's going to be a close call between this and Scorpion, because I think in terms of the low end grunt, I still feel that, practically, I'm talking about the practical sense, I still feel that Safari kind of steals the show, and then Scorpio is very close by, and XUV is slightly one step behind. So XUV is more about, the sophistication, having that performance right there, but things takes slight time, but they are good to go. Last but not the least, this is the horn of the car, and I genuinely feel that the horn of the XUV and Scorpio-N is slightly much better, because that gets a wind tone variant, and यहाँ पे you do not get a wind tone variant. This is the normal kiki wala horn, and I think with the next facelift, Tata should come up with a better horn for this car, that's for sure. Basically, this is a 2.2 liter engine producing 175 bhp of power and a whooping 400, okay, not supposed to leave hands like this, 400 Newton meter of torque from this engine, which is crazy. So the power delivery is actually very healthy in the mid-range. There's so much power, the power band is crazy in terms of the power delivery that is there in the mid-range. It's absolutely phenomenal. And tap the gas and this car sprints to glory. I'm talking about the U-turn, this electric power steering, which Mahindra clearly shows in the presentations that it is light. अगर manufacturer खुद बोल रहा है कि the steering is light, then it has to be super light. And yes, it's very light. It's one of the lightest steering that I've ever used. And while this is a very good thing for many people who love steerings which are nice to drive, easy to maneuver and all, but I am not a big fan of the steering. I'm not a fan of the steering at all. So it misses out on that heaviness. It, especially in the lower speed, in the 40-50s, it's not that great. Gearbox has just got better with this Scorpio. I'm telling you, it's a torque converter. The gear shifts are nice. I mean, the lag is very minute. It's very minute. It's talking about the NVH levels of this car. Petrol is ultra silent, but this car, the diesel, is not like that. but I'm okay with it. It's not at all loud. Talking about body roll, which we will have that in voiceover shortly, but overall the car feels very composed.
Speaking of the ride quality, the suspension of the Scorpio-N has been slightly tuned to be on a softer side. Smaller potholes are easily gulped by the Big Daddy, and this will be appreciated by many folks as Mahindras were not really courteous when it comes to taking you over bumpy roads. I generally found that the ride quality to be better than the XUV 7OO, but the Safari excels here with a lot of margin to spare. The Scorpio was always known to boast of a lot of body roll. We set our expectations right and boy we weren't disappointed at all. But since the Safari and XUV are monocoque chassis, it's a no-brainer that they are miles apart in high-speed cornering and stability. The Scorpio-N still inherits the body roll of older Scorpio in its DNA, but it's far less prominent now. The Safari's ride quality is mature but has a firm edge to it. At slower speeds, the ride isn't the plushiest, but press the accelerator and you'll be genuinely surprised by its high-speed ride quality. It's definitely better than both XUV and Scorpio-N without a second thought. Straight line stability is fantastic at high speeds. The confidence is inspiring from the chassis, but this isn't an SUV that loves to be pushed in corners. It's taller than the XUV but shorter than the Scorpio-N. The tall boy characteristics ensure it's not going to smile if you rev it hard in 36 hairpin bends of Ooty. Safari gets a terrain response system inspired by Land Rover with 2 selectable modes, apart from the normal driving mode. Wet mode is designed for driving in the rain or wet roads by providing better traction and handling. Handling is the department where the XUV was always known to excel, and this car seems to be undisputed king in this department, and the handling characteristics are genuinely impressive. It isn't a low-slung sedan to offer negligible body roll, just that it's not very evident unlike other taller SUVs pitted here. I remember driving this car at the high-speed track in Chennai with speeds over 180 km per hour, and this refused to show any kind of nervousness. Not even a bit. It's astronomically good to see a car which can still hold up against the strongest of its rivals. Although the ride quality has been considerably improved over the 500 series, there's still some room for improvement when you pit it against the arch-rival Safari. In fact, the Scorpio-N realistically feels more planted on bad roads.
So let's get straight to the point. Which amongst these 3 cars should you buy? Pick the Tata Safari if your priorities are ride and handling. This car is the most comfortable car among these 3 that we have right now. Not only that, if you are someone who plans to sit for longer durations in the third row, there is absolutely nothing better than the Tata Safari amongst these 3 cars that we had for the competition test. Not only that, the addition of sliding function for the second row makes a lot more room for the flexibility that this car has to offer. But if you're someone who likes laundry list of technology, if you're someone who wants to experiment with things like ADAS, and if you're someone who is hungry for power and torque, there is no car that is better than this, the Shutterdrives Car of the Year 2021, the Mahindra XUV 7OO. It's one of the perfect package India has ever seen till date. Trust me, this car can give serious run for the money to the segment higher. Not only this, there's nothing that can come close to this in the range of even 40 to 50 lakh rupees. If 4x4 capabilities is not a priority, you would rather prefer to stay away from this Scorpio and pick the XUV 7OO. This car has insane capabilities in terms of off-roading, and that's what makes it a true-blooded SUV with rugged body-on-frame DNA. And not just the 4x4 capabilities, this car is a serious mile muncher. We drove it from Pune to Bangalore, and trust me, we did not get tired even a single bit, and I really mean it. In a nutshell, if you love adventure and if you plan to do a lot of cross-country trips, the Scorpio-N is the one to go for. If you guys like this first comparison video from Shutterdrives, do follow us on Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Take care and bye-bye.